In 1990, the year before I was born, the Voyager 1 space probe did something remarkable. 6 billion kilometres from Earth, our envoy to the stars turned around its onboard camera and took photos, 60 of them. When we received them, there, in one frame, one pixel, the faintest glimmer of blue light in the darkness. This is us seen from 6 billion kilometres, and it's quite possibly the most famous picture ever taken of the Earth. Immortalised in history, it's known as the pale blue dot. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm an astronomer, and today I hope to give you something of the story of space, the progress that we in New Zealand are making at pushing towards the stars, and some thoughts on what the future might hold. So let's start at the beginning. Every civilization has looked to the skies in search of some deeper meaning. There's this desire to categorise and to connect the dots. Some cultures worship the sky. Some built monuments to things like the rising and setting points of the sun at the summer solstice. Even if it was originally by imposing our own gods and mythologies, it's part of this broader drive to understand the universe and our place in it that I think is fundamental to a lot of science. These days, of course, we know so much more. Astronomy, which is often called the oldest science, has taught us things about the universe that we never dreamed could be possible. Things like black holes and stretched space-time, enormous swirling disks of stars, and supernovae, explosions in space. And we mustn't forget that we are also all part of the space generation. We belong to a race that has left its planet. Even my father, a man whom I tease mercilessly about being an old fart, hi Dad, even my father is part of the space generation because he remembers sitting at school watching this on TV. So here's the stance that I'm going to take. Research in these areas, in astronomy and space science, is beneficial to New Zealand. I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty difficult stance to take, and there is no one magical piece of technology that I can point at and say, this will improve our lives. But we can look at some concrete examples of how we can benefit. So I'll start with my personal experience. As someone beginning an honours degree, and therefore research, I've been involved in looking for dark matter using gamma ray or high energy ray observations. Here's some pictures of the work that I've done. The details are irrelevant, but you can ask me afterwards if you have any questions. No, the key question here is, where do I get the data from? There are certainly no gamma ray observatories in New Zealand. No, I get the data from a satellite called Fermi, launched and operated by NASA. I just download it from the internet. So despite the image that you might have of astronomers being people who wear lab coats and sit in dark rooms and look through telescopes a lot, that's not the case. This is not how astronomy is done these days. There's an increasing divorce between the collection and the analysis of data, and New Zealand stands to benefit from this by being the host of international projects. So in a world of increasing population density, you have to build telescopes in places that are radiation quiet. So for example, for an optical telescope, like our Mount John University Observatory here, this means optically quiet, no light pollution, good weather. For a radio telescope, it means no cell phone towers, no microwaves, no radio masts. You may be aware that the Mackenzie Basin has recently been declared one of the world's largest dark sky reserves. It's a case of location, location, location. We have a vantage point into the southern sky that's beneficial if you want to cover the whole of the sky. We have one of the best dark sky sites in the world, and others are interested. So I'll turn to something that you may have heard of in the news recently. It's called the SKA, or Square Kilometre Array. And it's been hell actually trying to write this speech because none of the information has been pinned down yet, but here's what we know. The SKA will be the world's largest radio telescope when it's constructed, beginning in about 2016. And it's recently been announced that the SKA will be split across South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Okay, so what? Well, the Ministry of Economic Development estimated that 500 new high-tech jobs will be created if the SKA were to be sited in New Zealand and Australia. The head of the New Zealand-Australia bid estimated a $750 million infrastructure investment would result. And it's not just that. When I was working in Sydney a couple of summers ago at the Australian Astronomical Observatory, we heard from some guys at IBM who told us about the work they're doing at ASCAP, a precursor radio array currently located in Western Australia. The involvement of IBM in a project like this is not some sort of corporate pleasantry. It's an absolute necessity because of the vast amounts of data this thing will be generating. It's estimated that once it's fully operational, the SKA will be generating more data in one day than the planet currently does in a whole year. So you can see that we need IBM and companies like this to handle the data infrastructure, the processing, the transport, the storage that you need. It's a chance for us to bring top-notch technical talent into the country. Before I go on, I should probably mention, for honesty's sake, that it is sounding increasingly like New Zealand may not have the role in this that we thought we would. We may only have 1 or 2 telescope sites, and there may not be this level of investment. If this is the case, should we be disheartened? I say no. I think we should be encouraged, and I think we should be damn proud of the fact that New Zealand has been judged one of the best places in the world to do radio astronomy. And I think we should be resolved to push forward and continue supporting these sorts of projects that bring not only amazing scientific outcomes, but jobs and the attention of the international community. So this is astronomy. This is us sitting here and looking out. But there's a thriving industry related to putting things in space as well. And I'm going to show this picture because it's one of my absolute favourites. I can see my house in Christchurch from here. I was reading recently about the Large Hadron Collider. An estimate had that for every euro of investment in the Large Hadron Collider, €3 worth of new technology were created, things like silicon detectors in medical imaging. Well, a similar estimate for the space industry puts it at more than twice that, $7 to $8 of new technology created for every dollar of investment. Now, I don't have the breath nor the time to list all these new technologies, but NASA has a magazine called Spin-Off that they've published for more than 35 years that covers the various technologies that come from space research. They include things like powdered lubricants, water purification systems, where's my big stick, infrared air thermometers. The point I want to make here is that development of the aerospace sector relies on and results in the development of other advanced technologies. All right, so we're going to look at 2 New Zealand companies that are having some success in this area. They are Auckland-based rocket design and fabrication company Rocket Lab Limited and Wellington-based optical design and fabrication company KiwiStar Optics. So we'll start with KiwiStar. They're located at Industrial Research's site over in Gracefield, and they've been involved in optical design for more than 50 years now. They're having success because they offer something that many of their competitors can't, which is a complete optical design and fabrication system under one roof. A range of top-notch technical talent. But where they're really excelling is in finding a particular niche, as you can see from all the contracts that they've won around the world. The niche that they've filled is called KiwiSpec. It's an A-shell spectrograph. Now, those of you who are familiar with Pink Floyd may know that light splits up as it passes through a refractive object like a prism. Spectroscopy is the science of taking the split-up light and using it to find out where it's come from, information about where the light has come from. So KiwiSpec looks like this, and although in A-shell spectroscopy we use something called an A-shell grating, which is a grooved piece of metal instead of a prism, the philosophy is the same. The light comes in here, it's split up by the A-shell grating down here, and a CCD detector, just like the one on your digital camera there, allows us to look at very narrow ranges of wavelengths or of colour. So by understanding how light interacts with matter, we can find out where the light's come from and what it's passed through on the way. So if an astronomer says to you, we've detected methane around this planet, this is how they know. KiwiSpec is successful because it's small, lightweight, highly portable, and it's made with mostly off-the-shelf components. So KiwiStar are filling this very specific, very clever little niche. Okay, so we'll move on and look at Rocket Lab now. You may recognise them for their launch of New Zealand's first suborbital rocket, the Atia-1, Atia being Māori for space, a couple of years ago, which received a fair bit of media coverage. They are headquartered in Auckland, founded by scientist Peter Beck and entrepreneur Mark Rocket, Mark whom I talked to a few weeks ago, that's him there. And Rocket Lab design and produce rockets, which is a market that many thought New Zealand would never ever have a chance in. Yet the Atia-1 was designed in 9 months, entirely in-house, and it uses a proprietary propulsion system that since won them contracts from around the world. It was never Sir Paul Callaghan's vision that we would attempt to compete in big industries. And it's small companies with smart ideas like Rocket Lab and KiwiStar that are going to bring success. It's my opinion that the increasing internationalisation and privatisation of the space industry will result in increased opportunities for small companies like these. We've seen the rise of private spaceflight companies like Virgin Galactic and SpaceX. Well, who's to say that if, for example, New Zealanders have smart ideas about better rocket propellants or a better spectrograph, that they couldn't be involved in something like this? Small companies with smart ideas is what our country needs. So, in the final few minutes, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the social benefits of research in astronomy and the space sciences. And I was going to quote statistics at you and tell you about the number of films and books and movies that have captured everyone's imaginations and the number of children that have been turned on to a lifetime of science by space, but then I thought, no, in fact, I'm just going to show you. So I'll show you a few of my favourite pictures of the universe. You can see what I see. So consider the sun here. With the photosphere, the central bit, blocked out, we can see the corona, the million-degree plasma emanating from its surface. Or a little bit further out, there's Mars, and just a couple of hundred years ago, we thought that its surface was crisscrossed by a series of canals, the hallmarks of some alien civilization. Of course, now we've been to Mars. We know that this isn't the case, and although we haven't found any alien life, we've definitely found water on Mars. Further out, we see things like Saturn's rings with this incredibly delicate structure, seen here in natural colour like your eye would see it, and sites like this, two colliding galaxies, known as the mice because of the way the immense gravitational interactions between them have torn off the outer layers of stars and left them spread out as these extended tails across the sky. Now, I've heard it said that the world will end in fire, but perhaps it will end in mice. And finally, we see sites like this, known as the pillars of creation, because these enormous clouds of dust and gas are condensing to form new stars. That's the light you can see at the peaks there. Those are baby stars. These are stellar nurseries. So, in the end, astronomy is about, and space sciences are about more than just X number of dollars of economic benefits and Y number of jobs created. Firstly, they're about amazing role models, male and female. Some New Zealanders amongst them, like our own Beatrice Tinsley here, or up in the corner, Sir William Hayward Pickering, who was director of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory for many years. Whether we're turning our gaze to the sky or focusing it back upon ourselves, astronomy and space science are about people. They're about fears and hopes, dreams and wonder and triumph, and the hope that as we look out at a vast and essentially, some would say essentially uncaring universe, that we can take that sense of wonder, strive to keep it, and to create a better future for ourselves. Thank you.